coming. Can you hear me? Thank you to Orlando for inviting me here. It's a real pleasure to be back. And thank you for that incredibly beautiful and generous introduction, which I appreciate so much. I'm actually going to begin with a few poems that are not from Perception. I have noticed that it's better and more effective to go from longer to shorter than shorter to longer in a reading. So I'm actually going to begin with a few poems from a collection I'm finishing right now called Stardust Media. And the first poem is called November Begins. His shirt's Hellenic folds pleat a stanza on the stage, whirling a beeline from torso to shoulder to the fingertips that beat a dance in air. No centimeter shorn of nerve, nothing not electric. And I also saw a cattleya orchid past its day, shivering to sugar spun, with one petal lifting its quizzical valediction. Ficus shadows silhouette our yellow walls at night. Friday in the conservatory, long fronds like Kodak paper bleached by sunspots. Nature dreaming of a near-extinct technology. My crimson tree has combed itself of leaves, cleaning the structure that can lattice a cloud. This next poem deals with radiography and painting, so that if you look at painting, those who are expert in that can see the way pigment changes over time as paintings are restored when they age. So one of these pigments is called Carmine Lake. Carmine Lake was the red well of Van Gogh's wishes for his 3-bedroom paintings. He wanted lilac walls and doors, and got them when he cut this pigment with others, before it burned out across the unlived centuries, its brightness dispersing like clouds over time. When conservators show their recent radiography, dark pink particles will star throughout the blue paint's epidermal layers. It's all that's left now, the colors after life, a certain loss of feeling, like the pigment that fades from our hair as we age. Though I could be mistaken. The first time I ever heard my father cry, this was on the telephone. He was nearly 80. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm more emotional than I used to be." I don't know if, a little closer? Can you hear better?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if anyone here got to see the super blood moon a couple of years ago, but we did, near Lake Michigan in Chicago. And this poem addresses that. It does have a quotation in French from Paul Éluard, which translated means, the earth is blue like an orange. Flirt. The bank of cloud that night was like a smoother lamb's wool, a fistful you'd pull to stuff a point shoe for ballet class. Or maybe the cloud bank was more like the tiny cotton coverlet in a costume jewelry gift box, the rough cut layer you lift to reveal the ring. But rather than acting inert like jewels, the stars began to flee right over and under the opacity, conserving a certain dialect of flirt, the way Hayder Ackerman draped some spiderweb-ish filaments across his model's face, and then fasten them with safety pins all along the girl's smoothly alternating thatches of white and fuchsia hair. When photographed from behind the scenes, the model looked bushed, I have to say. Still, it was a privilege. Not everyone can pass for a ghost orchid, a syrinx with strings. This was on a Trocadero runway in Paris, autumn 2015, after the super blood moon made its last earthly visit until 2033. It was not exactly bloody, but la terre est bleue comme une orange, as Éluard said. In this case, skies were black as an orange, or a peach moon harboring illegible gray characters south of the huge pale scrolled cotton cloud curl when I sat beside my husband and my friend, the three of us staring at the sky charade, with all our legs pressed against the white rocks bordering Lake Michigan, and half our neighbors there too, with telescopes and phones. Don't you think the word beside says more about love than almost anything else could? And safety pins, the ammonite fossils of punk bands, strewn throughout the landscape of our thrilling torn debris. So I want to stay here and make much ado about everything. Woo! Thank you. This next poem is called Voice Road, which actually is a place in Michigan. All the kids' bodies nestled their devices, their screens as hushed as aquarium night lights. But that's not happening on Voice Road, Michigan, which ends in a field cleared by pirouetting tree trunks observed from a car. Voice is the windlass that rescues diffidence from splintering the everyday. Your voice sheltered me through sharing when I thought I didn't want to speak. And many things do happen in the wilds of northern Michigan. A new young monk lofts Christ-like in the monastery, floorboards kissing his arms and legs and cheek. Now he's risen, smiling at the hegemon, holding his right hand. South of them, Petoskey stones are acting much like hieroglyphs, but short on verbiage no matter how you puzzle. And Voice Road is always there. One clear night in Arcadia, Michigan, I had a dream about a dog named Missionary. Missionary chased a ball in the river, then kicked at the constancy, the secret part of water, that my dream said resisted every tremor, every arabesque. Later, Heidegger or Derrida asked me to dream of Van Gogh's shoes arisen in a goldish mist, my husband's snowy Timberlands kicked out the door on the nights he sells Christmas trees late into December. Under the soles slides the loneliness of the field path as evening falls, wrote Heidegger. And why should we chase a philosopher from poems if his words just lowered me, hand over hand, to the loneliness of work? The last poem I'll read from this group is called Transparent. And it actually, I don't know if any of you have seen the TV show Transparent. Some people have. And it does refer to that show. For those who aren't familiar with Transparent, the show, it is about a trans woman who has a family of adult children, a man who transitions into being a woman a little bit later in life. And it's very interesting. So this is called Transparent. Some days the credits are more glorious than the show itself. The rustling piano arpeggios, the font, the known electronic initiation ritual. There seems to me some risk in a decorated supplement, sky blue rectangular eyeglass frames, let's say. In contrast to such brightness, the framed eye begins to murk, Enfrainment for Heidegger could mean too much ordering. Anyway, the credits roll, ushering you to the show you know, opening the plot's current door, number 3. But the credits don't roll these days. They'll have to smoke and star, like a TV show's unconscious. Or today we might say instead, like neural cartography. So now assemble all your pillows, settle down and watch. How many times did I see stardust glittering this girl's lips and eyes as she pressed her face to God? A startlingly crooked tooth every time she cracks the smile, a face like a fresco in the corner of a transept, or the face itself is stardust on the cusp of crossing over. I'm going to read just one poem plus what I call a verso poem from Grains of the Voice, and then finish with some poems from Perception. I think some people here might have taken a look at some of the poems in Perception before tonight, perhaps, I don't know. But sometimes people ask me how I got to those very short poems. And I thought about it and I realized that I had done these short poems in the book Grains of the Voice as versos, that is, as backsides to the more conventional lineated poems in this particular section. And the rhythms of those short verso poems, I think, really stayed with me, and I ended up doing a whole book in a way based on those rhythms. So I thought I would read you one pair of these from Grains of the Voice. Some of you heard Orlando say I'm a consulting editor at Poetry Magazine, and I see everything that comes into the magazine. And we used to have everything in paper. And the poet Samuel Monash, who some people here might be familiar with, used to send us these beautifully written cursive poems in magic marker that would come into the magazine. And I loved them. It was like getting a little artifact every time in the mail, which we still got snail mail then. So this is called Harrow. His poems loop in sky blue ink, magic marker, 2 variants I fix to my wall as a memo about love and mud and the gutters of a house burned out, rendering that love now legible as smoke. I liked how he'd written it twice, transposing 2 lines, so I put it in my pipe twice, much as I'd liked to transpose my own prone body in my mind's microscopic eye. Nights I'd turn between 2 points of a gable, forking small paths from a very local change in perspective, lake effect or cloud bank, quick with teleology. And though I once sat still above a sea of piano keys when asked, quite young, to transpose a minuet, I'd also made a wish to live on the floor and on the ceiling at once. And that's when it started, the raising of my house. Verso, homunculus. Ethereal antipodal was wont, the mind's islet, let telos fell, small paths and swaths, nimbus transfer, memo, Harrow, Valentine. So those verso poems became, in a way, this book Perception. And I'll read several poems from this book to complete the reading. They are very much, as Orlando was saying, poems about looking, about glancing. And I just loved what he said about how the hand was involved. He also used some language that incorporated taste too. And I love the way poetry can do that. It can seem very visual, and yet it can bring in all of the other senses, or many, many of the other senses. So this one is called Framed Dragonfly. The wings are nearly nothing, some filament from baby's brush, the wing thus porthole to the leaf. A smaller purple, small like the bee's balm, remembered in the field, a tatter in the blossom and the hue faded eastward, deep sips missing from the bevel glass that constitutes our loved color, violet. On metaphor, a suspension bridge now rises from the road, or doesn't it resolve into the waist of a violin, its bridge under strings? Such transport, rectitude, imminent, intangible. Little as a daffodil. That's a line from Emily Dickinson. What's suited then to fill the ravenous pupil of the mind's little eye? What butters and frills? What pixelates, thickening a fiercest remembrance? A window. In air, in supplication, the four ceramic hands rise, modeling a serpentine delft along the vellum of the fingernail. Wingershik Beach. Turner could try it. The lighthouse shriven pearl, the stumbling immersive cloud, a dog's paws carpeting the sand in coronas. The painting flew from the wall. When the twisters were only dark-eyed incipients, it mustered its gold, its mountainous, its vanishings, and breathed at the top of the diving tower. Immersion. That butterfly had carried a night upon its wings. Can you try then to tip bright Venus to your face like a page? Sierra Nevada. An inroad of diamond fretwork in the cliffside, asked to be secret, its open work in all our eyes. Lantern. When gray clouds shade the half-moon lantern, it bathes their edges, it kindles their perimeter. So gray will elongate north, northwest, as cumulus thins the dark, becomes the pith of the dark. Hindsight. We were watching your son chase the floating feral milkweed tuft aloft in the condo's dusk, that softer spider we too once took for a creature. Call the soul. Not just a flame, but a foliate flame, never concentric nor rippled meteoric, but haptic, tactical, retinal, a bread box. Thank you.